In the previous session, we discussed about the concept of overhead cost variance. Now, we will discuss few problems and solutions in overhead cost variance. So, here is illustration 1. From the following data, calculate variable overhead variances. So, variable overhead, so you see there are two columns, budgeted and actual. So, variable overhead budgeted 2,50,000 and 2,60,000. Output in units 25,000, 20,000, working hours 1,25,000 and 1,10,000, right. So, here is the solution. Standard variable overhead per unit 2,50,000 by 25,000, that is rupees 10. Standard variable overhead per hour is rupees 2,50,000 by 1,25,000, that is rupees 2. Time allowed per unit of output 1,25,000 rupees divided by 25,000, rupees 5 per hours, right. Variable overhead, it will be rupees 5 per hour. Variable overhead expenditure variance, actual hours worked into standard rate per hour minus actual overhead. So, it is rupees 1,10,000 into rupees 2 minus actual overhead is rupees 2,60,000. So, it is 40,000. Now, you see the actual overhead is more than the budgeted overhead. We can put a bracket here. So, it is adverse, 40,000 adverse. Variable overhead efficiency variance, standard time for actual production, standard variable overhead rate per hour minus actual hours worked into standard variable overhead rate per hour. So, rupees 1 lakh into rupees 2 minus, we can put a bracket here, minus 1,10,000 into rupees 2. So, rupees 20,000 adverse, right. Here also you see the actual one, right. This is actual and this is budgeted. So, you see the actual one is more than the budgeted, so it is adverse, right. So, total variable overhead variance is equal to actual output into standard rate per unit minus actual overhead. So, 20,000, right, into rupees 10 minus 2,60,000. So, rupees 60,000 adverse, right. So, here you see if you add these two, 40,000 adverse plus 20,000 adverse, you will get the 60,000 adverse. So, it is more or less, it is, it is okay, it is working. Illustration 2, right, output 15,000 units budgeted, actual 16,000 units, number of working days 25 budgeted, 27 actual, fixed overhead 30,000 budgeted, 30,500 actual, variable overhead 45,000 budgeted, 47,000 actual. There was an increase of 5% in capacity, right. From this you need to calculate the overhead variances. So, total overhead cost variance is equal to, here is the solution, the total overhead cost variance is equal to actual units into standard rate minus actual overhead cost. So, 16,000 units, rupees 2 plus rupees 3 minus rupees 30,500 plus 30,500 plus rupees 47,000, right. Here you see it is given 30,500 and 47,000, fine. So, if you calculate, it will be 80,000 rupees minus 77,500. So, you see the actual is less than the standard cost, right. The standard is this is standard, this is actual. So, it is 2,500 favorable, right. So, standard rate is equal to standard overheads by standard output. So, standard rate fixed is 30,000 by 15,000 rupees 2, variable is 45,000 divided by 15,000, so rupees 3, and actual overhead cost is 30,500 plus 47,000. If you add, you will get 77,500, fine. Okay. We can do it like this, variable overhead expenditure variance is actual units into standard rate minus actual variable overhead cost. So, 16,000 into 3 minus 47,000. So, it is 1,000, right. Fixed overhead variance is 16 actual units into standard rate minus actual fixed overheads. So, 16,000 into 2 minus 30,500. So, it is 1500 favorable. The volume variance is what? Actual units into standard rate minus budgeted fixed overhead. So, 16,000 into 2 is 32,000 minus 30,000. So, it is coming 2,000 favorable, right. And expenditure variance is budgeted fixed overhead minus actual fixed overhead. So, 30,000 minus 30,500. So, 500 adverse, right. There is a capacity variance. So, the capacity variance is standard rate into revised budgeted units minus budgeted units, right. So, budgeted unit for 25 days is 15,000 units, right, and budgeted units for 27 days. You can see in the question here, it is 27 here actually. The budgeted days were 25. So, for 27 days, it is 15,000 by 25 into 27. So, 16,200 units. Revised budgeted units after 5% increase is 5% increase in capacity is 1,710, right, and it is 17,010. So, revised budgeted units after 5% increase in capacity is 17,010, right. We can calculate it like this. And capacity variance is rupees 2 into 17,010 minus 16,200 is 1620 favorable, right. So, we can see here budgeted unit is 16,200, right, for 20, and actual production is after 5% increase, it is 700. So, it is increasing. So, it is favorable, right. Efficiency variance, standard rate actual production minus standard into actual production minus standard production. Budgeted production is 15,000 units. Production increase due to increase in capacity 810 units. Production increase due to 2 more working days 1200 units. So, efficiency variance is rupees 2, 1600 units minus 17,010 units is equal to rupees 2 into minus 1010 units, right. So, it is 2020 adverse, right. Illustration 3, from the following data calculate the overhead variances. So, overheads budgeted here, actual here, budgeted overhead 3,75,000, actual 3,77,500, output per man hour in units is 2, actual it is 1.9, number of working days 25, actual 27, man hours per day 5,000 and actual 5,500. So, standard working days, it is given in the question, it is 25. Standard man hour per day, it is 5,000. Standard output per man hour is 2. Standard output is 25 into 5,000 into 2, that is 2,50,000 units. Standard fixed overhead is given, it is 3,75,000. You can see here, it is 3,75,000. So, standard rate per unit is 3,75,000 rupees divided by 2,50,000. So, rupees 1.50, right. And actual working days, it is given here, it is 27, right. Actual working 27. Actual man hours per day, it is 5,500, it is given 5,500. Actual output per man hour it is 1.9, it is given here, it is 1.9. So, actual output is 27 from here into 5500 from here into 1.9 from here. So, if we calculate, it is 282150 units, right. So, we can calculate the variances now. So, fixed overhead variance is equal to actual output into standard rate minus actual overheads, right. So, actual output is 282150, we calculated it here, right, here we calculated 282150 and into 1.5, right, the standard rate, here you see the standard rate minus 377500, which is the actual overhead, 377500, it is given in the question. So, it is the actual overhead, right. If you solve this, you see the standard overhead should be 4,23,225, whereas the actual is 3,77,500. So, it is 45,725 favorable, because actual overhead is lower than the standard rate. Expenditure variance is budgeted overhead minus actual overheads. So, budgeted overhead is here, it is given, you see 3,75,000. So, budgeted overhead is given 3,75,000 minus actual overhead, it is 3,77,500, already we calculated. So, here the actual is more than the budgeted, so it is adverse, right. Volume variance, I can calculate actual output into standard rate minus budgeted overheads. So, actual output is 282150 units into 1.5 minus 3,75,000. So, if you calculate, it is, you see the actual output into standard rate is 4,23,225 and the budgeted overheads is 3,25,000. So, 48,225 is favorable, right. Now, if you add these two, it should come here, right. Okay. Now, capacity variance, standard rate into revised budgeted units minus budgeted units. So, revised budgeted units are calculated as follows: actual working days 27, revised man hours due in increase in capacity 5500, standard output per man hour is 2, revised budget units is 27 into 5500 into 2, that is 2,97,000 units. Budgeted units is 27 into 5,000 into 2, that is 2,70,000 units. So, capacity variance is 1.5 into 2,97,000 minus 2,70,000. So, 40,500 favorable, right. So, 40,500 favorable is your capacity variance. So, we can calculate the calendar variance like this. The calendar variance arises because of change in number of days, fine. So, the budgeted number of days were 25, actual number of days is 27, right. So, 2 more days, 2 more working days are there. The production has increased by 2,50,000 divided by 25 into 2, so 20,000 units. So, calendar variance is 20,000 units into 1.50, that is 30,000 favorable, fine. Now, efficiency variance we can calculate by using this formula. Standard rate is actual production into actual production minus standard production. Standard production, that is number of units which should have been produced if there had been no increase or decrease in efficiency. Budgeted output is equal to 2,50,000 units. Production increased due to increase in capacity 27,000 units. Production increased due to 2 more working days 20,000 units. So, if you add this, then it comes to 2,97,000 units. So, efficiency variance is equal to rupees 1.50 into 2,82,150 units minus 2,97,000 units. So, rupees 1.50 into minus 14,850 units. So, it is 22,275 adverse. So, we can verify it like this: fixed overhead variance is equal to volume variance plus expenditure variance. So, overhead variance we calculated 45,275 favorable is equal to volume variance we calculated 48,225 favorable, and expenditure variance we calculated 2,500 adverse. So, if we equate both right hand side and the left hand side, you see they are equal. So, it is verified. Then again, volume variance is equal to capacity variance plus calendar variance plus efficiency variance. So, we calculated volume variance as 48,225 favorable, capacity variance as 40,500 favorable, calendar variance 30,000 favorable, and efficiency variance 22,275 adverse, right. Now, if we equate right hand side and the left hand side, you see both are equal. So, this shows that our calculations are correct. Okay. Okay. Now, we are coming to illustration 4, right. SB Limited has furnished you the following data. So, budgeted and actual, right. The number of working days is 25 and 27. Production in units 20,000, 20,000, fixed overheads 30,000, 31,000. The budgeted fixed overhead rate is rupee 1 per hour. In July 24, the actual hours worked were 31,500. Calculate the efficiency variance, capacity variance, calendar variance, volume variance, expenditure variance, and total overhead variance. Fine. So, you need to do this. Okay. So, budgeted fixed overhead is 30,000. This is a solution. So, budgeted fixed overhead is given 30,000, fixed overhead rate per hour 1 rupee. Therefore, budgeted hours is 30,000 hours. 30,000 rupees divided by rupee 1. Budgeted production in units, it is 20,000. It is given here, right? You see, 20,000, and therefore, the standard time per unit is 30,000 by 20,000, that is 1.5 hours. So, standard rate per unit is 30,000 by 20,000, that is rupees 1.50. Fine. Now, efficiency variance we can calculate like this. Efficiency variance is equal to standard overhead rate per hour into standard hours for actual output minus actual hour worked. So, rupee 1 equal to 33,000 minus 31,500. So, 1,500 favorable, right. Capacity variance, standard rate per hour into actual hours worked minus budgeted hours for 27 days. So, rupee 1, 31,500 minus 32,400 is 900 adverse, right. So, budgeted hours for 25 days are 30,000. Therefore, budgeted hours for 27 days are 32,400. How it comes? 30,000 by 25 into 27. Calendar variance we can calculate by using this formula: standard overheads divided by standard number of days into actual working days minus standard working days. So, 30,000 by 25 into 27 minus 25, so 2400 favorable, right. Volume variance we can calculate using this formula: standard rate per unit, actual output minus standard output. So, 1.5 into 22,000 minus 20,000, that is 3,000 favorable. Expenditure variance, budgeted overheads minus actual overheads, rupees 30,000 minus rupees 31,000. So, rupees 1,000 adverse. Total overhead variance, standard overheads for actual output minus actual overheads, or standard rate per unit into actual output minus actual overheads. So, 1.5 into 22,000 minus 31,000 is equal to 2,000 favorable. Next illustration, illustration 5. A company is operating a system of standard costing and closing its books quarterly. The budgeted overheads were rupees 2,55,000. The overhead rate was predetermined as 5.1 per labor hour, and during a period actually utilized 52,000 labor hours, whereas it should have spent only 51,000 hours. The actual overheads gave a rate of 4.9 per labor hour. How do you record the variance, right? So, standard overheads is rupees 5.10. We can add a 0 here, right? Standard time for actual production 51,000 hours. Standard overheads for actual output 51,000 into 5.1, it is 2,60,100. We can add a 0 here, right? And actual overheads per hour is rupees 4.90, and actual time taken 52,000 labor hours. So, actual overhead is 52,000 into 4.9, so 2,54,800. So, that is my actual overhead. So, we can show the standard overheads for actual production as 2,60,100. It comes from 51,000 labor hours at rupees 5.10, right? And fixed overhead cost variance, the volume variance is 5100 favorable, expenditure variance 200 favorable. So, total is 5,300, and actual overheads for 52,000 labor hours at the rate of 4.90, it is 2,54,800. Okay. Thank you.